awesome giving a TED Talk. It's just crazy. It's so great. And also, I have no idea what I'm doing. I put together a bunch of slides. I'm totally winging it. I don't know. So just be prepared, because that's how I'm going through it. So I'm going to talk about I-95, which is a project that I worked on for the last 10 years and just finished this past May. I began it when I was 30, and I worked on it until I was 40 and a month. I'm from Philadelphia, and Philadelphia plays a very, very big part in my life. I love to be where I'm from, and I love the city, and it's very central to myself. I went to Mayfair and McCall and Greenfield and Girls High. So I'm all the way through public school. And I lived in a number of different places in Philadelphia. This is my mother, Eileen. Is she here? Where is she? You've got to fucking be kidding me. Oh, someone's hearing about this. So, yeah, I'm not even going to discuss this. So I was very, very fortunate to have a parent who invested a lot in the idea of art being important and culture being important. And it was very, very valuable to me and to my siblings growing up. This is the car affectionately known as the Brown Bomber that broke down at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I must have been like 7 or 8, and it was winter. And we had to call my grandfather from the Northeast to come and repair it to get back home. So it's a very, I have a long memory of the Philadelphia Museum of Art being a central part and a very important part of my life. This is my brother Cosmo. This is my brother Walker. This is my sister Savannah. And they are all incredibly important in my life and in my practice. They are an incredible support system, and I rely on them endlessly for free labor and advice. My sister especially. This is my wife, Lynn Bloom. Is she here? Okay, I've had it. That's it. Son of a bitch. She's supposed to walk over. Yeah, come on. Oh, good. Hi, honey. I love you. So this is a speech for a different time of how fucked up it is that we can't be married. We've been together for quite some time. Here we are at the piano bar on Sansom Street in 1989. And here we are this year, actually. So it's, none of the work that I made would have been possible without her emotional support and her financial support and her incredible stability and excellence. And so she is a true collaborator in all of my work, although I produce it on my own. And it would not be possible without her or the extensive support system I have of my family. That being said, when I was in my late 20s, I came up with the idea of an installation that would be placed underneath I-95 in South Philadelphia. And I decided that it would be a 10-year-long project, and I was going to devote myself to it. I really didn't quite fully know what that meant at the time. I mean, I knew that I was really very serious about doing it, but it became an incredible, life-changing process in terms of working on this. So I started in 2000. That support system helped to chip in, and I bought a camera, and then I began making the photographs for the installation. So starting from 2000, I began to work on making photographs that would work underneath I-95 in this particular space. And the format stayed exactly the same with the exception of an hour edition. It started as 1 to 3, and I changed it from 1 to 4 because I didn't think it was enough time to be under 95. And this is what it was. So I worked on it every day, all time, every minute of my life, essentially. And it was about the beauty and struggle of everyday life. And the way that I went about doing that was the photographs that I made were heavy on particular themes. The first one was personal imagery, and the second was gender and fluidity of gender, and the third was addiction and desire, and the fourth was American identity, and the fifth was about getting by, and the sixth was about hope and pride and joy. And so each aisle was heavy on one theme, and there were sub-themes across, so that you could enter the installation in any way and have it read like a palindrome, so you could kind of get a sense and make your own narrative from start to finish. So when we started, it was just me and my immediate family and my wife. And as time went on and more people came, it became a bigger and bigger show and more people came. But what we did was we prepped under the highway, we swept and cleaned out all the big stuff and painted the pillars and scraped them. This is my intern, Manny Dominguez Jr., who I managed to snag early on, and he was a great help of cleaning. So we cleaned under the highway for a long time. It was very important to prep the space so it was possible to use it. And this year I was very fortunate to have a lot of people who volunteered. This particular image shows a line down the center of the highway, and it's 1 o'clock. So I started the show at a very particular time in which a shaft of light illuminated the underside of the highway. And it was absolutely imperative that it started this very particular time in which there was this Stonehengean moment of this beautiful, beautiful line that kind of illuminated the incredible classical qualities of the architecture underneath there. And so printed the pictures, and my wife and I got up in the morning and put them up. In the beginning, it was about 6 hours, and then as I got fancier and fancier and had more money to kick into it, it became 3 hours because I got them laminated with an adhesive backing. And this is what the show was like. People walked around. You could come in and enter and exit at any given point. I gave out maps that told where the photograph was made so people didn't get hung up on wanting to know where it was, and also with a corresponding number, so if they wanted, they could buy a $5 photo at the front. So all the photos are up. They were up for 3 hours, and then when the show was done, it was done. The original intent was that they could just stay up for the elements, and then kind of as the show went on, people took them down at 4 o'clock. Either way, that's fine. Yeah, so this was it. And it was an awful lot. It was a way more than I had ever anticipated, actually. And I would say, as I worked on the show, I became more and more invested in it. And as I kept working on it, it became a much, much bigger part of my life than I had ever anticipated. And while I had committed myself to working on it, I didn't realize that it was going to be this life commitment at which many things went out the window. And I'm very grateful for those, like my family and my wife, who supported me, and the city of Philadelphia, actually, because I feel like we didn't have kids. I mean, there's lots of other things that kind of were like big life choices that was through the entire duration of my 30s that I made that were fairly significant in relation to this project. And I don't have any regrets about it, but it was certainly way more all-encompassing than I could have ever expected. And around 2004, I began to see, like, I was nuts. Like, I was super full throttle freight train driven to do this. So I started to show works in progress shows, which were shown in October, so people could see the work as it progressed. And I began to have a pretty strong online presence as it became easy to show these images and the working process. And then I began to have all these fancy shows, which was so nuts. So I got a Pew Grant, and then I showed at the Philadelphia ICA, and the Whitney Biennial, like all these things that are just so unrelated to me in my own life, just totally insane. I had this book come out, here's some show at the Wexner, all these things are just beyond. And I went to Spain for a fellowship, and that's where I made this photo of Senora Jacinta. And then there was a show in Spain in which the photograph was shown outside. And then here's a guy taking the photograph off of the pillar in South Philly. So all of these photos, no matter what I did or where I went, they all came back to this very specific installation. They were all made for it. The entire 10-year body of work was intended to be seen underneath I-95. And so I kept going at it. Here it is, joy and bane of my existence. So I started making photographs when I was 30, and I just went into it. I had a concept as to how the photographs should work underneath the highway. And there was 3 basic forms: text-based, architectural-based, and portraiture. And I needed all 3 so that there could be a dialogue happening as you moved through it. The portraits are all portraits of strangers. Every person in the portrait is a person who I met because I approached them and asked to take their photograph. And it was very important to me to have this as part of the process of the show. And one of the things that began to happen as I worked on the show is this is a photo of Monique Carbone, and she was a neighbor. I made this photo of her. She was a stranger. And I stopped and asked to take her portrait, and it became a very important portrait in the body of work for me. And then I saw her several years later and approached her and made a photo of her here, and it was a very, obviously, extraordinarily difficult moment and a very, very difficult portrait and interaction, and I hadn't recognized her. I didn't recognize her except for her tattoo. And it was a real jarring and really very difficult moment to think that I had this very intimate relationship with this photograph, with this woman in my mind, and yet I didn't know her. I only spent like 10 minutes with her. And so I made the second photo, which became another very important photo, although a very, very difficult one. And about a year after I made the second photo, I was in the Whitney Biennial, and this photograph was an L. It was a little blurb about get in the Whitney Biennial, it's awesome. Check it out. And I received an email from her mother, Gina, that said, you don't know me, but I know you, and I saw Monique's photograph in Elle. We were so excited about it, and I'm very sorry to tell you that she's passed away, and it's a real heartbreak to me, but I wanted you to know how happy she was that you made this photo and how happy she was that it was in the magazine. And from that email, we became friends and have an exchange, and I actually emailed her earlier today to say that I'd be talking about it. And it was a moment in which there was this kind of bleed in which there was there was no boundary to this project. It was as if I was bringing all of my stuff with, and I was getting all of this stuff in. And this was a very distinct story as to how Gina became very important to me, and so did her family. And it was just fascinating how, as I worked on this project, the people in the portraits kind of came in and out, and some came in literally. It was a very, it was kind of a difficult thing to learn, and was also very demanding on those in my life that I allow these people, strangers, kind of as part of our lives. This is where my great-grandmother lived, on Susquehanna Avenue. It was a kosher butcher shop. And it's not a house I knew growing up, although it's my grandmother knew it, my mother knew it. And it's a house that I've known in general, kind of just as the old neighborhood. And it's very important for me to include these very personal images. This is my grandparents' wall, which includes a picture of my mother and me and my immediate family there. So one of the things is the formal aspects of the photographs, and the portraiture has to exchange, and there has to be a talk back and forth like this. Yeah, how good is that? Right. And so like there's a dialogue between these two photographs, and so the individual images are very important, and so is the context. Also, when I started shooting digitally, there's an exchange that where these portraits have very subtle differences, and yet in terms of showing them, they have very important differences to me. This one has a closed hand, and this one has an open hand. And it makes a big difference in how I show it. Here's Mickey. He was a kid who I took a photograph on 2nd Street making out with some lady. And then during '95, here he is walking back from Target. He just ran into me and was like, dude, I can't believe I'm in this show and in the book. And may I also comment on this, that he has no idea who he was making out with in the photograph. Totally was like, I don't know. So as the show got bigger and bigger, and it got like more and more in my head, it was just tremendous. And this is all of the photographs that were in the last show. And this is essentially what was happening in my head. This is still kind of going on in this moment as we're talking about it. So it was shooting these photographs and thinking about them and editing it and moving these moments around and orchestrating it in a way so that it made perfect sense. And it was something that was way more of a commitment and way more difficult than I anticipated, but I'm very happy with the way that it ended up. You know, this is the Move Fire, where the city of Philadelphia murdered 11 people. And that was a horrible, horrible moment as a Philadelphian. And here is where the Phillies won the 2009 parade, which was an absolute thrilling moment. And I'm very happy to be from Philadelphia. I'm very proud of it, and I take all of the things, the tremendous shame and the tremendous joy and the pride and the struggle, and all of these things are really part of self and something that I would hope to convey in the show that I had under 95. This is a slide by Anselm Kiefer, which is Negrito. The Philadelphia Museum of Art had it up, and it's one that's of great, great importance to me. It's something that I really loved, and as I kind of came into my 30s, I found that I was thinking about it a lot more, even though I'd seen it as a teenager. It was just something that had kind of held with me. And this is a photograph that I made that I thought looked just like it, but 15 years after the fact, I hadn't even really thought about it. So I'm really very pleased and proud to be having a big solo show there, because that's like your super dream come true. What are you going to say? That's it. That's my whole talk. Thanks. Love TED Talk. Woo!